Welcome to the Superstar Communicator podcast. My name is Susan Heaton-Wright, a leading impact, speaking and communications expert. My aim is to show you how to make an impact so you will be heard, listened to and respected for career success. Listen weekly to the podcast and go to our website, superstarcommunicator.com. Hello everybody, this is Susan Heaton-Wright from Superstar Communicator. We all know that at the moment there are real challenges in our lives, and for those people who have attended one of my resilience virtual workshops, you will know that there are 5 areas that I consider, and they include financial well-being. Now, in those virtual workshops, I always say that I am not a financial expert, and I give a couple of tips on where you should go and talk, who you should go and talk to if you are worried about this. However, I have a treat for you today. On the other end of the internet, we have the financial education master, the financial well-being guru called Peter Komolafe. And I've got his name right. Peter, welcome.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Can you say a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a financial education advocate is probably the best way to put it. I'm a financial coach, really.
Yes.
The title financial coach is kind of like non-existent. It's not really a recognized profession here in the UK just yet. In the States, there are lots of financial coaches. But yeah, I'm very, very passionate about financial education, coaching people on finances, because it's certainly been my experience, and it's probably been yours as well, Susan, and people who are listening, that financial education is lacking in the school system and has been lacking for decades. So often what happens is, if I look at my experience exclusively, and I'm sure this is going to be the same for most people listening, you don't learn about it in school. You don't get it from home if you're not from a privileged or upper class household. And what tends to happen is, as you grow up, you go through adulthood, you go through trial and error. So you learn about credit cards by getting a credit card and going into credit card debt. And depending on your disposition and how you are formed in terms of your habits and how you regard money, that could either be a positive or a negative learning experience. So now, with 15 years experience in financial services, I essentially spend my time creating content to help educate people on all the stuff that I've learned through working as a cashier in the retail bank, to being a corporate business advisor in banking, to being in wealth management, being a qualified financial advisor, qualified mortgage advisor, being an exec on a Fortune 100 company. So now I just share my knowledge on my podcast, on YouTube, on my Instagram, and coach people to make the best financial decisions possible.
Do you know, this is incredible because, for 2 reasons. One of them being that with the whole resilience piece, financial well-being is a major cause of stress. Because we're
Yes.
just not taught to talk about finance.
Yeah. Do you know what the numbers are on that, by the way? Because I actually wrote a paper. So you are 4.6 times more likely to be going through anxiety if you have money worries, and 4.1 times more likely to be going through depression if you are worried about money.
Oh
So
my goodness.
when you look at financial well-being as a concept, there are 4 key pillars for financial well-being. The first one is having the ability to deal with just sort of your day-to-day money control. So budgeting, money coming in, money coming out. Now, in an ideal scenario, what you want to be able to do is have more money coming in than you have going out. But that isn't true for everybody, depending on obviously what they've got in terms of committed outcome expenditure. The second one is your ability to be able to deal with sudden shocks. And guess what? We've just been through a major sudden shock, COVID, furlough, people taking pay cuts, people losing jobs, people not being able to pay rent, people, lining up for food banks. Your ability to deal with these kind of circumstances is huge. And it's a big factor when it comes to financial well-being. So if you don't have that in place, just the ability to know that, well, I've gone on furlough, I've taken a 25% pay cut, but I'm going to be okay. That increases your possibility of suffering anxiety, suffering stress, suffering depression. The third one is being in a position where you feel that you have enough money coming in to help you achieve life goals. So for many people, young people these days, home ownership is a big thing, but deposits are a huge obstacle because of the wage gaps and how much people are earning now compared to the prices of property. So that's one thing. And the final thing is the ability to feel as though you can live life to the fullest based on what you're earning right now. And that is simple things like you want to go on holiday twice a year or three times a year. You want to be able to work 4 days a week as opposed to 5 days a week, having that freedom of that feeling of fulfillment. Those are the 4 pillars of financial well-being. And unfortunately, given everything that we've gone through right now, those pillars are being tested strenuously. So it's an interesting time right now.
I'm so glad you brought that all up because there is a lot of focus on physical well-being and mental well-being, and yet financial well-being, as you've just quoted with those figures, it is playing a major impact on people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to my comment earlier where I said that financial coaching isn't a recognized job here in the UK. So let's put it this way, right? If you go back 10, 15 years, and I remember this from when I was working in the bank, right? You would go to your bank and you would find a financial advisor in there. You could actually speak to somebody in branch.
Yes.
Nowadays, you can't, because even with the branches that are open, they've got limited services. But the banks weren't going to help you with how you actually budget your money. And again, these are things that we don't get taught in school, and we learn through trial and error, just going through adulthood. And there was a piece of, or there was a research paper that I read a few months ago. They were saying that, you actually have your money habits instilled in you at age 7.
Yes.
At age 7, right? So that's already fully embedded into your psyche, into your mindset at age 7. Now you compound that with not getting any exposure, no education whatsoever in school or at home, and you take that into adulthood, depending on what kind of adulthood you lead and the circles that you're in, then it could be quite destructive if you're not in a positive environment, or you're not in that place where you think about money in an active basis. Because the reality is we all get busy with life. We go to work, we've got family, we've got friends, we want to socialize. Money isn't something that comes to the forefront of anybody's mind at any regular intervals, unless it's, oh, I need to buy this, or I need to do this, and it involves money. And my biggest mantra, certainly on YouTube, is because money is a tool. And that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned. Money is there to help you live the life that you want. But in order for you to use it for the tool that it is, you need to know what you want in the first place. And that's where I call my channel, and my podcast is called Conversation of Money, because people know that I talk about money, and that conversation we don't have. It's very un-British to talk about
I was
money.
going to say that we Brits, we just don't, it's something that we are very, very uncomfortable talking about money, whether it is asking for a pay rise, to asking for a discount, or what's the price.
Yeah, I mean, it's impolite. It's grained into us that we just don't speak about that. And we need to have more conversations about this, because the conversation of money can be very, very enriching and very, very enlightening if you're willing to just open up and just have that conversation. And that's not just, just talking about money for the sake of it, but having, a conversation of money with your partner, with your family, with your friends, and just opening up and trying to see, what did you learn? What do you do? Those kind of things. That exchange of knowledge is really, really important.
So what would your first tip be for a couple to start a conversation about that? Because I would imagine that there are some people who have partners who are listening today have never had that money conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're in a partnership with a partner, why are you together? You're there because you want to build a life together, right? So trying to get an understanding of, what are your joint goals? What are your joint goals? It might be, actually, we've not bought a house yet, so I want to buy property. Okay. Yeah. So once you know what that is, look, let's go and have a look at some properties. Let's have a look at what the price ranges are, where we want to buy, and then start to have a look at, okay, well, we're going to need a deposit. How much is the deposit? And that can very easily lead into How do we get into the numbers of what we're going to need so you can actually form a plan? I always say to people, and this is what I do in coaching as well, it's very well saying, you need to do this, Susan. But the question is why?
Yes.
So you have to find something that is of intrinsic value to essentially be the catalyst for a change or for action. So with a couple, what are you together? What do you want to achieve together? That's the intrinsic value. That's the intrinsic driver. That will then push and act as a catalyst to physical action being taken towards said goal. Because if you're not working towards a goal that is intrinsic to you, that is valuable to you, you're never going to do anything about it. And that's just the reality of human nature.
Do you find that there's a difference between men and women with the way their attitudes to finance?
Absolutely. Now,
Ooh, this
so,
is interesting.
so this is a really, really interesting topic to discuss, actually, because I think historically, women have not always been in charge of finances or being at the
Yes.
forefront of any financial sort of activity. That is definitely changing, though. Definitely changing. I mean, certainly over the last 2-3 years, I'm seeing more. Over the last 2 years, I would say, I'm definitely seeing more involvement, more women being involved and advocating for financial well-being, financial knowledge, and all that kind of stuff. And certainly from my days being a financial advisor, I know of instances where we've gone to see a couple and the husband has always managed the finances. And I remember seeing a couple where the husband had passed away and the wife had no idea what was there.
It's
And
heartbreaking, isn't it?
it's terrible because now she's in a position where she has no idea what stocks were there. And oftentimes, because she hasn't been involved in it, there are no wills, there are no trusts, there are there's none of this stuff that makes the transition of being able to even cope for that loss even bearable. Because in addition to having to deal with that loss, you're now having to deal with an absolute mess because other things weren't put in place that women would have naturally advocated for, because women are naturally more organized and more thorough in their thought process than most men are. And that I've always found to be a fact. But certainly now, women are more involved. And actually, from when I look at the shape of what I do, most of my coaching clients have been women, although majority of men watch me on YouTube, majority of men listen to the podcast. Women are the ones who take more action. And I think that's because we have the male bravado of, I can do this myself, I'm all good. Whereas women are more open to say, actually, I would actually like to learn and seek some help and get some guidance and some education on X, Y, and Z. Whereas a guy would kind of think, well, I can sort that out myself. I'll do it myself, because that's almost the way men are hardwired.
But also for their listeners, Peter is a very, very handsome gentleman. And I'm sure that means that some women do want to work with you. I'm sure it helps.
I don't know about that, but thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I that's what I found, and I've always thought,
Blushing.
Why is that? Like, I have more women coach and take courses with me. Like, I've got an investment course, for example, to teach people how the basics of investing in the stock market. So that's a big topic right now. And most of the people that come on the course or take the coaching with me one-on-one are women. So
there you go. No, it's because you're really, really good. You're so articulate. You're coming across as really trustworthy, and you know your stuff.
I appreciate that. I mean, I think ultimately I was very, very, I was reticent about going on YouTube at the beginning of the year, because it's one thing to put yourself out there and really put your face to what you're saying. And I guess everybody has imposter syndrome sometimes, right? Even though I've been in the industry for 15 years and I'm a qualified financial advisor, I'm a qualified mortgage advisor. Certainly for me, I'm my own self-critic, harshest self-critic.
Yeah.
I have to be perfect almost. So putting my name to things wasn't really something that I felt comfortable doing. But again, it was my friend who kind of said, look, you've actually got a unique selling point here in the fact that you're not the typical financial advisor.
Yes.
You're not an old guy. You look differently because you're from a different background. So therefore, not only are you going to be different, and people will look at you'll help people see money and finances differently. I've also got my own very, very unique story to tell as well. I wasn't always good with money. I've been very, very lucky to have worked here in Canary Wharf and been an exec of a Fortune 100 and done really, really well there. But my background is my parents are poor. My parents are Nigerian. I've been homeless twice. And, that experience hopefully will inspire other people to say, well, I don't have a university degree, for example, right? But I still ended up in Canary Wharf.
Yes.
Bit of luck, bit of a risk taking, but certainly hard work.
Yeah.
And it's a journey of hopefully being able to inspire people to know that if they have a goal, they just need to go for it and give it their best shot. And I think I am a living example of that to a certain degree.
I think it's really, really interesting and such a powerful story because, as you say, we have this image in the back of our mind. And I do quite a bit of work with the CII.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing a virtual training in soft skills, and they're, a fantastic organization and group of people. But we still have this image of an older man
Mm-hmm.
giving you financial advice almost in a paternal way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, well, we look at the financial services industry, there is a huge problem in the fact that majority of the financial advisors are older people. I think the average age of a financial advisor now is somewhere between 55 and 60. There is not enough young blood, newer people coming through to take their place. And that in itself presents a challenge. But certainly what I found in what I do and, through the podcast and through YouTube is that people aren't necessarily trusting of financial advisors. And
Well, yeah.
I being in the industry, I will be the first one to say that is in some cases very much deserved in terms of a reputation to have, because the industry hasn't always been known for being the most, I wouldn't say ethical isn't the right word, but forthright, I would guess.
Yes.
There are certainly some bad eggs in the industry, certainly some bad eggs. And that's a whole can of worms that you can open elsewhere. But people aren't trusting of financial advisors, partly because of reputation, and secondly, because they feel as though, because we're not taught this stuff in school, they don't want to go to a financial advisor because they don't want to feel stupid if they ask a question.
I
And
think right.
Yeah. And therefore, people will approach me and ask me questions, say, well, how does this work? And I say, look, I can't give you any advice, but I can certainly give you some guidance and coach you on the things that you need to know so that you can make an informed decision, so that even if you don't go to a financial advisor, you know how things work. And when you do go to a financial advisor, you know the right questions to ask.
Yes.
And at least you have a foundation. And that's why I feel that financial coaching comes in, because it is that step before you want to get ready to go and see a financial advisor, or before you absolutely need to go see a financial advisor, to help you get things in line and everything in a row, so that you know what you're doing, you know what goals you want to achieve, and how your money can help you do that.
I think you've made some really, really good points because you certainly for me, I had an endowment mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
This
Yeah.
is back, listeners, this is back to the late 80s, 90s, when you
Yeah.
would be sold an endowment mortgage, but the endowment never covered
Yeah.
the mortgage repayment.
Yeah.
And then the other one was that I had an equitable life pension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and so for me, I always have that warning sign, a little bit of a warning sign, because I've experienced that,
Mm-hmm.
those things. And it's perfectly understandable. And I think it's great that what you're doing is reassuring people again, so that they can make informed decisions, because there were not people like you around when I made those decisions.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's like, well, look, where do you turn to? You can't go
Yes.
to your banks anymore.
No.
So financial advisors, because they're all self-employed, majority of them are self-employed, they won't see you unless you have, 50 grand or something like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So what tends to happen is you're now left in a place where you can't go to the bank, and financial advisors won't see if you don't meet their minimums. So you're then left to Google
Yeah.
stuff. which can be a minefield on its own. You can watch videos on YouTube. And this is my experience of YouTube. And there are a lot of people who create content and lots of bloggers who provide very, very useful content. However, when you're looking for something that's specific, that is pension related, or is mortgage related, or is investment related, or related to inheritance tax, for example, or tax, there are lots of people creating content that are not qualified to actually talk about those
Yeah.
kind of things. And so if that's all the information that you have, you then run the risk of taking information that's incorrect. Then there's consequences and repercussions later on because you've taken the wrong information. So what you need is actually a reputable source that you can gain information from, or at least gain some guidance from, to kind of set the bar of what you need to do. And that's what I think and hope to like to hope that I think that I do on YouTube,
Oh,
is being
it's,
someone who's qualified, who can at least come with experience of being in the
yes,
industry to say, right, these are the things that you need to consider. These are some factual information pieces that you need to know, but there's lots of nuances. And to be honest, the nuances matter. The
yes,
nuances really, really matter because the devil is in the detail. Saying everyone should have an ISA is great, but there are certain circumstances where you should definitely not have an ISA. But knowing the nuances of when you should and shouldn't is where the real value lies.
Now, I always ask my my guests for 3 top tips. And because superstar communicator is about spoken communication,
Mhm.
and you are somebody who is encouraging financial conversations.
Mhm.
What are your 3 top tips related to that?
What, to start a financial conversation?
Yeah, or continue it. Yeah.
Right. So first and foremost, if you're with a partner or with family or anyone like that, or even with yourself, just ask yourself a very simple question: what do you want to get out of life? What is your goal? Right. I think sometimes again we get stuck in this rat race of 9 to 5 family and just trying to find some kind of balance that we never really think about. Okay, where do we want to be in a year or 2 years time? I think it's really important that we take the time to understand what that is. So ask yourself what that is first and foremost, and then ask yourself, do you need money to make that happen? The reality is people have different goals. So it might be buying a house, but it might be, I want to have more time with family. Okay, well, that's going to require some money in some way, shape, or form, depending on what you want to do. You want to go on holidays, travel the world, you're going to need something. So identify what that goal is, what it is that you want, what's going to make you happy, what's that add value for that fulfillment in your life. Then have a look at what the monetary element is, right? And say, okay, what does it need? So I coached a lady called Simone. She was on my podcast about a couple, 2-3 months ago, and she's self-employed. So her whole thing was, when you book a coaching session with me, I send you like a questionnaire, and you have to fill that in, and we talk about what you want to achieve. And her whole thing was, I want more balance.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was like, okay, that's very fine, but we will dig into that. So when we started thinking about what does it actually mean, it came to, well, I need money. Okay, but yeah, okay, how much and why? And it's like, well, I would need, I guess, about 60 grand to feel like I've got freedom. So I've got that flexibility. She's self-employed. I want to work maybe 3-4 days a week.
Yes.
Okay, cool. But why do you want to work 3-4 days a week? Okay, I want to, because I want more time to enjoy myself. Okay, what do you want to do on those days off? I want to go on European holidays. I want to take some extended holidays. Okay, where do you want to go? I want to go one long haul holiday, then maybe some city breaks around Europe. Okay, so what is that going to cost you roughly? Start adding up all of the cost. Then we arrived, actually, she doesn't need 60 grand. What you actually need is, you want something like £25,000, actually. And that's going overboard. That includes her emergency fund as well, which is really, really important. But
Yeah.
having that conversation allows you to get down to the monetary value. Once you know what the monetary value is, then it's all about sitting down, having a really good look at what you earn and what you've got going out, and saying, right, okay, so if my holiday is going to cost me X amount of money, then what I need to do is put aside this amount of money each month to enable me to do that one thing. And just doing those 3 things are very, very simple. It takes time, and it's something that may not be a natural thing to do, because it may not be something that is natural to you to sit there and actually have a look at your finances. But believe me, by the time you've done it, the sense of fulfillment and the sense of purpose that you'll have at the end of it will be amazing. And you'll wonder why you hadn't done it before.
Oh, this is incredible. Listeners, I believe we all need to have Peter in our lives. Because I'm speaking to so many people and you know, clients as well, who say that their workforce are worried about money as well. So, you
Yeah.
know, this is an opportunity to get in touch with Peter, try and work out, reduce your stress. How can they get in contact with you, Peter?
Yeah, so I'm available on my website. You can contact me on there. I'm on Instagram, which is Conversation of Money. You can contact me via YouTube as well. On the workplace thing, I actually do some work with workplace employers
Do
to,
you?
yeah, workshops essentially. We're doing a couple this month actually. With everything that's gone on with COVID, I think some employers are open to the conversation, some are more reluctant. But I think it's really, really important to understand that if you're an employer, think about what your employers have been through.
Yes.
Employees have been through, sorry. They've had to take pay cuts. Some of them might be worried about their jobs. Some of them may have struggled to pay rent. Some of them may be in debt. One of the best things that you can do, bearing in mind that your employees are so important to the recovery effort right now
Yes.
for your business to come out, and we know, so the report that I quoted, the 4.6 and the 4.1 figure from before, that is part of a larger report that I wrote, which actually has a look at the impact of financial well-being in the workplace. We know that if your employee has any financial worries whatsoever, they're 12.4 times more likely less to not finish, or 12.4 times more likely not to be able to finish their daily task.
Oh my
They're
goodness.
1.5 times more likely to be looking for another job. So we know that there are issues when it comes to productivity, engagement, absenteeism, presenteeism. In 2018, according to a research paper, cost the private sector 1.5 billion pounds. This is a big problem for
This is
employers.
massive.
It's huge. So one of the best things you could do right now, if you're an employer and you really want to help your employees, bear in mind they have been through a lot of financial worries recently, is workshops. And what we basically do, what we're doing for one of the firms next week, is we're doing an hours workshop, and we're talking about how to improve financial well-being and how people can recession-proof their finances. And we're giving practical tips, tools that they can actually use, and we're actually giving them a recorded session. So we're going to have about 40 or 50 people join us for that one session, and it's going to be recorded. We're going to send that to the HR department, which will then be available to the remainder of the staff.
That's brilliant.
Workshops like this will add a huge amount of value to not just your employees, but actually making your employees understand that you actually care about their well-being, and
Yes.
not just their mental well-being, their financial well-being.
Absolutely. I think you honestly, you have hit the nail on the head with that. So if it's possible, if there are employers listening here, do they contact you via your website?
Yeah, they can contact me via my website, or they can contact me at pete@conversationofmoney.com.
So your website is conversation.
Ofmoney.com.
Okay, conversationofmoney.com.
Yeah.
And
All the work that I do with businesses is actually through another brand that I've set up called Moneytelligence. So they can
okay,
also reach me at moneytelligence.co.uk or pete@moneytelligence.co.uk.
brilliant. So we do I'll make sure that this is in the notes.
Thank you.
And is there anything else that you would like to add, Peter?
No, I just think if you're listening to this and you have been through sort of any financial worries or turmoil through COVID, and look, we're not even at the end of this. I mean, we're
No, we're
entering
not.
into Christmas now, and we're having, I think, a couple of places now are back into tier 3, forced into tier 3 now. We don't know when this is going to end, and I guess I would say to people that if you are having financial worries, it is a natural place to be, because we don't talk about money, to feel as though you need to bury your head in the sand and not tackle it head on. Please don't. There's lots of free resources out there. There's lots of stuff on my website. There's lots of stuff on the YouTube channel. Please go check it out. And if you do need help, fire me an email. I do consultations with people. I do troubleshooting calls as well, where we can literally just answer some very, very brief questions and say, right, this is something that you definitely need to have a look at. Feel free to reach out. Don't bury your head in the sand, and certainly don't feel as though you're in this on your own. There are plenty of people out there experiencing the same thing. And the more we talk and the more that we seek help, the easier it's all going to be for everybody.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you.
So you've got the message from Peter. It's really, really clear. Do contact him if you've got any concerns with your finances. Please do, because I don't want you to suffer. Peter doesn't want you to suffer.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So I would love to thank you on behalf of the listeners and myself, Peter, for coming on to this podcast. It has been a fantastic interview, and I'm so grateful to you for your time.
No, it's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. Like I said, anytime I get a message from a UK podcaster, I always respond, because these conversations are always great. So yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Listeners, take care, keep well. And until next time, this is Susan Heaton-Wright from Superstar Communicator. You have been listening to the Superstar Communicator podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and review the podcast on iTunes and on apps. Please contact us if you want to discuss any topic, could suggest a topic for us to include, or a guest who could come onto the podcast. Go to superstarcommunicator.com.